Hey everyone, and welcome to another Home Tech podcast. I'm Seth Johnson, and I'm joined as always by the co-host Jason Griffin. Jason, how you doing, man?
It's going great, Seth. How are you?
Oh man, well, I got a little special something on this episode. Let me clink this around in front of the microphone.
Oh man, it's going to be that kind of show, huh?
Yeah, got some water. No, that's not water. It's a good, nice little stiff drink of gin.
Oh man,
I had some money set aside, and of course, what that means is something has to go wrong in the house.
Murphy came a knocking.
Yeah. So the septic system has failed.
Oh man.
Yeah. It's been a rough week, but luckily we're getting hooked up to the sewer. But that's like a 2, maybe 3 week process. Who knows?
Well, and luckily you have gin in the house.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it's only good for one side of this equation here.
Very true. Oh man, that's no fun. Yeah, I'm sorry to hear that. As our listeners have probably heard, I'm getting ready to become a homeowner myself here if everything goes as planned within the next 4 weeks or so, and really looking forward to it. But that is one aspect of owning a home that I am not looking forward to is dealing with those major repairs that are sure to come up. So I'm sorry to hear that.
No worries. But I found something for your new home, Jason.
Yeah, we were talking about this, and this is a pretty interesting product. File this under the category of things that probably shouldn't be connected.
Yeah. So I got a message from we're working on a bigger condo, and I got a message from the architect saying that one of the homeowners wanted to put a particular toilet in their unit, and I started doing research on it. He said there's something that needs to go on the wall next to it, and I was like, all right, well, send me over the instruction manuals and the model number, and I'll figure it out. So we start looking into this thing, and there is a remote control for this toilet that gets mounted on the wall.
How funny. I had no idea. You had put this story up on our board here that we use to kind of track stories that we're going to talk about, and I had no idea where you had stumbled across it.
Oh,
so
I get to use one. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. I had no idea.
Yeah, so this is a $6,300 toilet. And that's retail. I don't know what it costs wholesale. Hopefully a little bit better, but yeah, seriously, come on.
The Numi Intelligent Toilet by Kohler, and this thing is sporting some interesting features. Touchscreen remote, like you said, with a magnetic wall mount docking station, built-in speakers to play pre-programmed custom Numi song, whatever that is, FM radio, and personal music from your portable device using Bluetooth. So a Bluetooth speaker built into your toilet.
Yep. Oh, it gets even better. It gets even better. I'm trying to see if I can integrate this. So there's actually an SD card on the back of this Numi toilet that will allow you to put whatever music you want to have locally on the toilet play out of the speakers. There's also a line in, like an auxiliary in, and a line out. So I'm looking to integrate the Sonos system with this toilet. And
do they have an API?
I don't think they do, but I don't think it's very complicated. You're basically using that wireless remote that's on the wall. It has that on-wall charging
if
station.
This then that integration?
Yeah. Oh my God, that's a great idea.
Just brainstorming.
That's a great idea. If this, then that, funny. Quite literally.
But it does have a bidet, which I think is kind of cool.
Oh yeah, I mean well, this thing has a better audio system than my car stereo. It seriously does. It also has like a hue light built into it, so you can change the mood lighting in there if it helps you out. Yeah, you totally can do that. So,
oh, love it. Well, it's just one of those things I saw this come across and really thought it was worth mentioning on the show. They're putting connectivity in just about anything these days.
Well, this is according to the website here, the bold look of Kohler. So, oh man, I just don't know what to think.
Moving on. We've got a few stories we're going to cover here tonight. This is actually just going to be you and me, Seth. We don't have any guests lined up, and we're just going to kick around a few news stories here that happened this week. And the first one that we want to jump into is sort of a follow-up story. We've been talking about this for a number of weeks running, and that's been some of the issues at SmartThings. They've been having little bit of hiccups with their servers and a lot of complaints going on. Last week we talked about some of the developer community seemingly getting a little bit fed up with what's going on with the platform, and so it definitely has not been all roses coming out of SmartThings, and it looks like they're taking some proactive steps here to try and address that. And it looks like they've made a big talent acquisition from Amazon in hiring their engineering director to start working as their senior vice president of engineering over at SmartThings. So a gentleman by the name of Ryan Parker comes with quite a pedigree, served as the director of engineering at Amazon for 5 years, and prior to that had spent 18 years at Microsoft. So he's got quite a bit of time in the industry, and we'll see if he can come into SmartThings and shake things up a little bit.
This kind of threw me for a loop when I saw it, because I kind of expect, I mean, Amazon's gearing up with the Echo and the Alexa platform, and to see somebody go from Amazon, I mean, to SmartThings was kind of shocking. Like, you would think it would go the other way, but this is good for SmartThings. I mean, I have no idea what this could have been going on for a long time, but I'm good for SmartThings. This is a great hire by them to get this guy on board. And one of his quotes you have here pulled out is he says, "I'm going to make something that is measurably better for the house, for your home." So that's I can't wait to see what it is, because
one would hope.
Yeah, one would definitely hope.
They've been having some troubles lately, and that's a great point that you make about, you would expect with all of the momentum that we've been seeing on Amazon's side to have seen this go the other way, and maybe Amazon take a big get a big hire out of SmartThings, but it actually went the other way, and one can assume from that SmartThings probably made Ryan Parker a very good offer, and so commend him, and I hope that he can get in there and help get the platform back on track. Yeah, you and I have discussed this before, and it really did, from its inception, seem like a platform that had a ton of potential, and I think their model makes sense in the way that they approach the smart home, and there's just been some struggles for them. And I think really I was reading an article about this story, and the interesting takeaway for me is that they really talked about one of his missions is going to be implementing what he was calling guardrails. And the idea is that these are a sort of safeguard that will help ensure tighter integration. So essentially, what I read into that is a tighter certification process. SmartThings has always been very into third-party development and allowing other people to come in and integrate with the platform. And that's a good thing. I think we all agree on that, but it also does open up the door to reliability and scalability issues. And Seth, you and I, as home technology professionals and integrators full time, can, I think, relate to that very easily, in that the more subsystems you start integrating in with your control, the complexity goes up, and it's not necessarily a linear thing, right? It can get vastly more complicated the more devices that you want to integrate and control. And so I think his mission really coming in is going to be tightening up that certification process, but maintaining the openness of SmartThings as a platform. And I think that's going to be really where the big challenge is finding that balance between openness and third-party integration and reliability. I think that'll be a challenge.
Yep. No, I completely agree. One more note on here is that today, as we're recording, is the Samsung Developer Conference, and SmartThings, of course, is a Samsung-owned company. So it looks like I'm kind of going through their blog right now. They've got a ton of people in their partner pavilion. So ADT, Bose, Fibaro, to name a couple, Honeywell, Philips, Yale, door locks and that kind of thing. They're also showing off Amazon Tap, Echo and Echo Dot integrations, First Alert integrations, Leviton Smart Lighting, Ring Doorbell, Skybell, some cameras and Scout alarms. So pretty cool, pretty encouraging to see. We'll see what comes out of the development conference to see if there's anything major news that pops up. But it's just one of those things. I'm just hoping that we see something good come out of SmartThings with all the bad press that they've had recently. Just hoping for the best for them, because I really do think it's a pretty cool platform.
Yep, I agree, and I do think the timing is interesting with the developer conference starting here this week and this new hire coming on board right around that same time. I don't know that they're necessarily directly correlated, but I do think that the timing is interesting, and I'll be curious to keep an eye on that developer conference and see what comes out of that. So let's move to another story here about a second DIY home automation platform that is having trouble as well, and that is the Staples Connect. And we've been hearing murmurings of this. Mike Wolf is a good friend of the show and had put up a post over at his site, the Next Market, and basically pointing to all the signs that, as he read, indicate Staples is going to be pulling the plug on the Connect smart home platform. And I think this is kind of a shame. You and I talked about this platform way back when it had first come out, and I thought it actually, in spite of that sort of awkward relationship that we were all kind of making fun of with office supplies and home automation, it actually looked like a pretty compelling platform. And they had a good partner in ZoneOff doing their back end, and so they had a number of things going for them. And it looked like when it first came out that it was actually going to be a pretty compelling offering, and it just sort of faltered out and appears to be headed for the wayside here.
Yep, the tea leaves that Mike is reading. I think many other people are reading at this point. Kind of seems like there's not good news ahead for the Staples Connect product line. I think we need to find like a sound for these funeral things. Like, and it's kind of like we could joke about this, but like, Jason, you and I have seen many products that cost a lot more than the sub $100 that this cost go away.
Yep.
Like, I've got tens of thousands of dollars of equipment that I can show you readily that doesn't work anymore because some home automation company went out of business 10 years ago. And not saying that makes it any easier to swallow when something like this happens, but it is something that will happen because we are in kind of an era of early adoption. We are still in that era of early adoption. Like these things will happen. We will see brands and ecosystems and standards, quote unquote standards, come and go. I mean, they will fall in and out of popularity, and eventually we'll get down to something that works for the majority of the people. Maybe that's 65% of the people, but eventually we'll get to that.
Yep.
And I don't see that happening really anytime soon. The good thing about Staples, though, is that I think they were mostly integrating with other people's products. Like they didn't have like a Staples protocol that they were trying to use. Like they were basically,
that's true.
Yeah, you could. I think they had Lutron integrated in. So if you bought a bunch of Lutron Serenia shades or something like that, you'd still be able to use those with many other things. So
that's a great point.
You're out of that $100 or whatever you put into their service, but you're not out of the automation devices that you installed.
Yeah, that's a great point. I actually hadn't thought of that, but it is very true. I think that a good friend of the show, also Richard Gunther, over from the Home On podcast, had a great piece on this. He put it up on Medium.com, and we'll put a link to that in our show notes at HomeTech.fm. And I think Richard's point, I would agree with by and large. He's saying that the title of his piece is "If Staples Connect has failed, Staples need only look within for answers." And the gist of the story is that a lot of people are looking at this story as well as the recent story that we had with the Revolve Hub being bricked by Nest, and people are reading into these stories essentially as an indictment of the smart home as a whole, and kind of saying, well, maybe the vision of the DIY smart home is somehow invalid, and pointing to this Staples story as an indication of that. And Richard's point, which I agree with, is that the failing of this platform is not an indictment of the smart home as a whole. It's just an indictment of Staples to put the necessary resources and effort into getting a product like this to kind of mainstream viability or just long-term success even. And so I think that is definitely worth a read for anybody following home technology, and we'd encourage you to stop by our website and click through to that, because I think Richard did a great job on that piece.
Yep, definitely. I mean, I'm with him there. I know Richard's been pretty vocal about how Staples has been attempting to sell the Staples Connect, or rather not selling the Staples Connect in their stores. And
right.
we've got a pretty good. Mike actually did this recording, so we were gonna air this live because we thought it was so funny. But it's in the show. We'll put this link to the article he wrote in the show notes, so check that out for sure. But one of the things he had on there was this really funny recording that he made of a customer service call that he made.
Thank you for your patience. We apologize for the delay.
Love this on hold.
I love that he did this.
Thanks for calling Everett Staples. How can I help you today?
Yeah, I was just wondering. I'm looking at your Staples Connect smart home products. Are you guys still selling those?
Say the last part one more time.
Staples Connect. It's a smart home product you guys sell. It's a Staples smart home product.
Let me check real quick.
Okay.
Be right back.
This guy would have done better if he just hung up at this point. Staples Connect. No, I've never heard of that. Let me ask my manager. So, I love this on hold music. Mike left in.
So there, sir.
Hello. Hey there.
Right. Okay, it looks like those are online-only items.
Okay.
They wouldn't sell those in store.
Okay.
But they
You
did.
remember them ever being sold there?
I haven't even seen those in store. Our Everett store doesn't really carry cell phones. The other stores do, but I don't remember seeing anything like that when I worked at Mill Creek.
Okay. Yeah, it's not really a cell phone. It's a Staples has its own home automation product called the Staples Connect.
Could be a cell phone.
Yeah, I don't remember seeing anything on that certain site right there. When I clicked on Staples Connect, it showed me a completely different menu of items I hadn't even known we had.
Huh. All right. Sounds like you don't know anything about it. So, all right. Appreciate it. Have a good one.
Oh, man. That is too funny. Oh, my gosh.
I love that he did that.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, so we thought we'd play that on the show, and I know, Seth, you and I both got a kick out of it, and we wanted to share with the audience. I think, all joking aside, it does speak to one of the challenges that Staples had, and again, going back to Richard's piece, and something that Richard's been very vocal about is the struggle of a company like Staples to figure out how to take a product like this to retail and how to effectively merchandise it. And I think that call clearly indicates what probably a lot of people would have had as an experience had they given Staples a call with that same inquiry, right?
Yeah, I mean, at this point, I don't know. I don't want to call it too early, but man, I think that's, sad trombone sound or whatever we have for this. I think I definitely wouldn't be looking into this product if I was looking to, where to start a home automation system. This is not the product I'd be looking at.
Yeah. Yep. Well, I think you're right. We've had our home automation bell and new protocol bell over the last couple of years, and it is getting to a point where we're going to need a sound effect for the opposite of that when something goes by the wayside, and so we'll have to work on that. Maybe you can fix it in post, Seth.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm going to have to think about it. I mean, I don't want to. It's kind of funny, and then it's not. Like, people did put money into this, and there's a lot of people that worked on this. Like, I can totally feel bad for the people that worked for Staples Connect and made this really cool product that was very interesting and had a retail outlet, right? Like, this was what you and I think
a big retail outlet.
Yeah. You and I were talking. You were actually pointing to the fact that, like, when we first started this podcast 2 years ago, there was this huge momentum, and we were seeing. I mean, one of the things that we looked at was Staples Connect and said, "This is insane. They're putting home automation in Staples, with next to the paper clips and 3-ring binders."
That's right. Yeah.
So, I mean, it's just one of those things. Like, I feel bad to see stuff like this go away, but I know that it's going to happen. I know that we're going to see these losses. And, hopefully they don't financially hit very many people off guard. Like, hopefully these systems continue to work until they can find some decent replacement, or, Amazon comes along and replaces everybody, right?
Right. Good point. Well, let's shift gears here a little bit. We've got another story we want to talk about. Isn't directly home automation based, but it is related to TV and over-the-top content and the evolution of cable. And I think this is it's an interesting landscape. Definitely one that I've been keeping an increasingly close eye on and really really evolving landscape. And this has to do with a couple of stories that are interrelated. And so to give it a little bit of context before we jump in too far, the FCC recently proposed a plan, if you haven't heard about it, that they're kind of putting some social media marketing spin on it, calling it Unlock the Box. And you can go on Twitter and search for hashtag Unlock the Box if you want to keep an eye on this. And the proposal, in short, is aimed at essentially forcing cable companies to adhere to open standards that would allow third-party development of cable boxes. And the argument being that cable boxes are a technology that, by and large, get stale, don't benefit the consumer. You're locked into leasing it from the cable provider. It's an extra charge, et cetera, et cetera. And so I can see the validity of that argument. That has been circulating for a little while. Recently, Roku, just this past week, announced a partnership with Xfinity. And they're going to now allow, through Xfinity's TV partner program, Xfinity customers will be able to get full access to their lineup of Comcast channels without having to lease a box from Comcast. They can use a Roku TV or a Roku, set-top box. And that's a pretty interesting development. And it would have, on the surface, led me to believe that Roku was probably supportive of the FCC's proposal to unlock cable boxes. Well, as it turns out, the third and final piece to this story that we're going to talk about is that a few days after the press release came out announcing the Roku and Xfinity partnership, the CEO and founder of Roku, Anthony Wood, put an op-ed out in the Wall Street Journal, essentially coming out against the movement by the FCC to unlock the box. And on the surface, I thought that was kind of interesting. Once I read a little bit more about it, it kind of makes sense. And his argument is that he doesn't believe that we necessarily need the government coming in and dictating this to the cable companies, and that the internet is already kind of forcing their hand. And obviously where you come down on that could get a little political, and we're not really going to go there with the show. But I think that it is an interesting story, regardless of where you come down on that argument, just to see the way that cable is shifting. And I think we could all agree that getting away from these antiquated cable boxes that we're stuck using right now would be a good thing. It's just a matter of how do we get there, right?
Yeah. I mean, I've been using cable cards or alternative cable boxes for well over 10 years now. I mean, I was forced to switch to TiVo after my Replay TV basically stopped working. So I've been using alternative DVRs, so to speak. I don't think I've ever used a Comcast cable box or a Verizon cable box, at least for any length of time that I wanted. Like, I've always moved off somewhere else. And I've got to say, the cable card debacle, I mean, it's just a nightmare. Basically, what happened was, and to this guy's point, like, the government said, hey, cable companies, you guys need to figure out a way to share your content to basically TiVos and, make sure it's encrypted and all that good stuff. And they said, okay, we'll make this cable card, and we won't support it. We won't help anybody that has one. We'll have one technician in the entire market, trust me, that's been trained on how to set this up. Big Congress came back and said, all right, dog food it, guys. You're gonna have to put a cable card in every single one of your devices. Oh, well, we don't really like that. So yeah, I mean, they've got some advantages to having their own boxes and their own equipment, but you know what? I don't agree with this guy. Like, there should be an easier way to get your content encrypted. Now, I understand piracy concerns and all that good stuff. Like, there should be a way to get it from the cable provider or from the content provider into your house. And I don't see how, like, in a day where I can securely go on to my bank and log into my bank and do, finance and trade stocks and all that stuff, like, these guys even have a leg to stand on when it comes to just providing content from Warner Brothers or whatever. It doesn't make any sense at all to me that there's no technological reason this can't be done. It's just they want to charge you. They still want to charge you $20 a month for a cable box that was made in 2004, and that's the long and short of it.
Yeah, I agree in general that I think we need to get away from the cable boxes. There was a lot of healthy debate going on in the comment section of the particular article I read, which was on The Verge. And some people, I think, were getting a little bit too cynical about this and sort of accusing Anthony Wood of being a puppet for Comcast with their Xfinity program, and that basically Xfinity is this TV partner program is a proprietary thing, and they were arguing that it doesn't really solve the real issue, and that again, Anthony Wood was kind of coming out as a puppet of Comcast, and they're trying to protect their nest egg here, or whatever it is. And I thought that was a little bit of a stretch. I think that Anthony Wood believes that the best way to get us to where we're all trying to go, if we assume that we all agree that cable boxes are pretty crappy, which I think is a safe thing that we can all kind of land on the same side of the fence there. And I think he's simply arguing that there might be a better way for us to get there. And so I think that's really where the argument comes down. But I think that this is really just a story that everyone should be paying attention to. And if you're into technology, TV is really the main thing that I use in my clients and everybody when we're talking about setting up a home technology system. The audio and video aspects of that system are a very, very core part of that system. And so I think that following this evolution of TV, the evolution of over-the-top content and opening up of cable boxes is a fascinating story. And I thought this was one that people should be paying attention to.
Yep. It's one of those. I can't wait for the day where we don't have to have some kind of cable box. Like I predicted, you can go back and find on forums where I was saying 2015 will be the year we're just plugging an Ethernet cable into our TVs, and I'm a little off, but I really do think it's right around the corner where your Comcast cable service will be nothing more than an app that runs on your TV. But it's going to take some initiative like this to make that happen, either by the government or by the Comcast or Time Warner. They're going to drag their feet as long as they can. So it's going to have to come from outside pressure. Yep.
Well, speaking of dicey politics getting in the way of technology, another story here. HD Fury is a line of products that we'll dive into here in just a second. But it looks like we saw a tweet today that they're pulling their products, and this was a tweet from a gentleman named Jeff Mitchell at Audio Jeff. Up on Twitter. And HD Fury, if you're not familiar, is kind of a cool line of products, and it takes an HDMI signal, and they've got a bunch of different models that will then break that signal out to go over different technologies, which could include analog technologies. So, for example, I looked at an HD Fury piece years back when we were looking to do a system for a gentleman who had an older home that was all pre-wired with component video cabling. And we were stuck with some particular design challenge, I can't remember now, that precluded us from easily using HDMI over 5-wire extenders. And so we were looking at these pieces, and glad to say we didn't invest a lot of time and money into using them, because it looks like they are having some issues now. And my guess, although I don't know this, is that the HDCP consortium or mob or whatever you want to call them is probably coming after these guys and forcing them to withdraw their products for now until they can figure out a game plan.
Yeah. I've actually had to use one of these. It came down to being in a pinch. It's a couple of years back. We didn't have the ability to run HDMI cable from the head end over to the projector, and there was a 5-wire in there. So we had basically a component video that we had to get to the projector. And of course, the projector supports 1080p over component video just fine. It's not outside the spec. But it's not digital, it's analog. And these little converter boxes convert the HDMI just fine. And I think we ran into a problem with the power supply once, as you do, but it's, as far as I know, it's still up and going and running in this guy's house, and he's perfectly happy, until the point where he's going to have to rip down some, major furnishings in the room to run a new HDMI cable. Like this was a full-blown theater with, fabric walls and all that stuff. So it wasn't an easy thing that was going to happen to run a new cable. But I'm looking. This was one guy's tweet, and I was looking through. It didn't seem like he was providing very much evidence that this was actually going to happen. But I was looking through some of the news, and there's a Warner Brothers is I guess was started to sue HD Fury back in January. So, man, I don't know why they go after these guys so quickly, but I don't know. It's kind of a strange thing because this has been on the market for such a long time. It's been skirting the rules, but it really sucks to not have that tool in your left in your toolbox. You know, the world has gone all HDMI for a while now, so I have to question even how much you'd ever need to use something like this anymore. Mm-hmm. So,
I think the real shame is that HDCP, the copy protection mechanism, in my opinion, doesn't do anything to really stop the people that really want to skirt HDCP, and people are out there pirating content at an increasing rate, regardless of what HDCP is doing. And so I think really these sort of technologies do nothing but make it harder for those of us who legitimately want to watch content. Right. And somebody who's stuck in a position of not having the proper cabling in their home and not wanting to rip apart their whole house just to get HDMI cabling might be stuck now using some other sort of technology that maybe doesn't work as reliably or whatever it is. I mean, there's always a way to get it done, but it just makes things a lot less convenient. And I don't think HDCP does anything to really stop the people who are truly determined to pirate content. And so it really just hurts the average consumer. And I think this is a perfect example of that.
I 100% agree. I think it's been pretty much proven at this point. I mean, with Netflix, Hulu, heck, my wife wants to cut off cable and go the Netflix route and Amazon and Hulu. Like we're seriously thinking about cutting the cord and just paying a couple bucks a month. But if you make it easy for me to get to the movies that I want to see, like just make it easy, I'll pay for them. I don't care. But
right.
Put it into a format that I want, and put it into a format that it's easy for me to get to without jumping through hoops, and I'll do it. And I understand that there are people out there that aren't like me, but I think there are more people like me than there are people that just want to sit back and steal movies all day long. It seems kind of childish at this point.
Yeah. All right, well, I totally agree. Let's move on here. We got a couple more stories we want to cover. The first one here is a CE Pro piece that had to do with Control 4. And the gist of the piece is that can high res audio be a Trojan horse for home automation? And the idea is that we've been looking for that piece as an industry that will get people sort of hooked into the smart home or hooked into home automation without necessarily going out with the express purpose of buying home automation. And I don't know, this article, it was getting kicked around a lot in our Slack channel, the hub today, and it was a very interesting dialogue. And I think that you and I come down on the same side of this story, Seth, in the sense that what Control 4 is trying to convey may be valid, but maybe that they're not doing it in the best possible way.
Yeah. This is really strange. I mean, I guess Control 4 is trying to say that they have a product that starts at $600. I mean, just basically for the product. That's roughly the same amount of money as, a Sonos piece or something. And not only do you get, this high resolution audio out of it, just like you would get with Sonos. Because I don't think, like, if you really look at it, is it high resolution audio? I don't know. Like, we're talking about like Pandora and online services. I guess they do support FLAC, but that aside, like, let's put that aside. It has decent DAs inside. I think that's what they're going for. But they're also saying, look, on top of that, the value add that we offer is that you get a full-blown home automation system for integrating with other devices, and all this costs $600 with the remote. And I think that's a good message. Like, that's really a good message to be putting out there, because it certainly is a very, very competitive piece in the marketplace these days. But I don't know, this message that they were going with, like touting to be, high resolution audio, and all the other stuff that screams louder than that one bullet point is kind of like, it's not a Trojan horse. I don't think my clients care too much about this particular aspect of the home.
Yeah. And I think, where you get side railed in that conversation is when you put the emphasis on the high resolution piece, in my opinion. I think they make a valid point in the sense that the EA1 controller with handheld remote is $600. And with that, you get a built-in audio streaming device, similar to something like a Sonos Connect, for example. And granted, the Sonos Connect is the most comparable piece in the Sonos lineup and is $350 retail versus $600. So not exactly the same price, but certainly within the same range. And what they're saying is, for $600, not only do you get a device that is capable of streaming from services like Pandora, Tidal, and Deezer, but you also get, like you said, a home automation piece that can control your media room, that can integrate with lights and shades. And I think that's a valid point. I don't know that it makes it a Trojan horse. I don't know that somebody is going to go out. If you call it a Trojan horse, what that implies to me is that somebody would go out potentially and look at the Control4 EA1 for its ability to act as a media streamer only, and that would get it into the house, and then it's, by the way, it can do home control. And I think that's a stretch.
Right.
I think that the emphasis on high resolution, in my opinion, misses the mark. I just don't see the demand for high resolution in the market. And I say this as somebody who's out there talking to clients and potential clients all day, every day. And I can't tell you how many times the audio conversation starts with the client telling me, quote, I am not an audiophile. And basically what they're saying is, don't try to sell me on a bunch of really high resolution, high fidelity stuff. I just want some basic music in my house. And so I think that the conversation is valid. I think the Control4 piece as a sales tool, it's very easy to explain to clients, look, you get a very powerful piece that can do essentially the core functions of what a Sonos Connect does, but on top of that, you get X, Y, and Z. And so I get that. I think that's where the conversation needs to be. I don't think it's a Trojan horse, and I don't think that the focus on high resolution is really something that's going to resonate with the average consumer.
Yeah, it's... as I said in the Slack channel today, I thought this argument about high resolution audio in the market actually wanting it died when everybody started buying iPods like a decade ago, right? Everybody agreed that the MP3 was just good enough, and their music sounded good enough for that. And I mean, even with the audio, I can totally hear the difference between MP3 music and uncompressed FLAC audio or whatever. I totally agree. It sounds better, but nobody cares. That's the problem.
Yeah.
And it may be heartbreaking to audiophiles to hear that, but the vast majority of the people want a system, an audio system that is good enough. And if it were the case that audio really mattered, you wouldn't see so many Bluetooth speakers on the market. I can't tell you how many crappy Bluetooth speakers exist out there that I hear every single day on job sites and construction sites, and my customers have in their homes that sound just absolutely horrid. But they don't care, because all they want is the little beat and the person's voice coming out of it, and it's good enough for them.
And convenience.
Right.
And convenience, and something that doesn't break the bank. And I think that's where the emphasis needs to be for the Control4 pieces, is that I think it's certainly don't want to be misconstrued here. I think it's fantastic that this home automation controller has a built-in media server in it. I think the fact that you can design a system and that's your one-stop shop and you get that ability built right into it is fantastic. I think it's a boon to consumers, and I think it's a win-win. I just think the focus on high resolution is something that isn't going to resonate with most consumers. Now, there are some people out there listening who I'm sure would disagree, and those who would disagree probably disagree vehemently. But at the end of the day, again, I say this as somebody who's out there selling this stuff and talking to clients all day, every day, and I just don't see it. I don't see the demand for it in the market. I see the demand for affordability and convenience by far trumping everything else.
Yeah, and if it sounds good, that's a huge bonus. A good sounding
icing on the cake.
Yeah, people notice that. They definitely notice when they have a nice sounding system. And if you put in, a professionally calibrated audio system next to a Sonos, like the Sonos sounds better than your Bluetooth speaker for sure, but it's not going to stand a chance against a real audio system that an integrator can put, or anybody could put in, really. I mean, if you paid enough for the speakers and the amplifiers and all that good stuff, like those sound excellent, but it's that value that people need to derive from it. And I'm with you, Jason. I don't see that coming from my customers or anybody else out there right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
For that to be like number one bullet point on this particular marketing piece that they're trying to do. I just think this one misses the mark in a couple ways, mostly because of the appeal they're trying to make to like audiophiles, which they don't hit because it's not really an audiophile piece, right? It's an automation controller. And then because 2-channel guys are definitely not going to go after this. And then again, it's not something that the average customer cares about. Evidently they've done their research and they disagree, and that's fine, but I'm just not seeing it that way.
Yeah. Yep. I'm with you. Well, let's move on. We got a final story here, and that's a national builder story. Taylor Morrison, so a big builder here in the United States, is moving into providing technology solutions for their production homes, and it looks like they're going to be using the Legrand Intuity platform. And that's interesting. We had talked about this platform last year at some point. I can't remember exactly when that was, but we were taking a look at it. It looked pretty interesting, but we couldn't quite figure out at the time who it was for. And I think we speculated that a production builder this might be a great fit for, and it would appear that Taylor Morrison agrees.
That would be episode 71, Jason, and good memory because it was July 13th of last year.
Very good. I'm good for something.
Yeah, there you go. I just did a quick search on it. We'll put the link in the show notes if you want to go hear us scratching our heads on who's going to buy this system. And it looks like we found out this particular market where Taylor Morrison is, they are working with a integrator in the area that's going to be putting in these Legrand Intuity control systems in their home. So if you're buying from Taylor Morrison, this could be like a little upgrade option for you. I think at the time we thought it was pretty cool because you could just slap an iPad inside of it and have like a little in-wall casing for an iPad, launches the app, and everything is done through that iPad interface. I guess when you need to upgrade the touchscreen, you pull the old iPad out, put a new one in, and you should be good to go, theoretically, if they don't change the sizes or anything, or how they charge. But what stood out to me, I think, and we were talking about this in the very beginning before we recorded the show, was that at the bottom of the article they said a fully functional Intuity system will cost $10,321 in one of Taylor Morrison's $700,000 homes. And I said that, and you kind of said, "Yeah, I saw that." And I said, "Yeah, that seems kind of low, Jason." And you said, "Yeah, I totally agree."
Yeah. It did strike me as low. I get that you could do things for $10,000, and I also understand when I say that there's probably a lot of people listening to the show who choke a little bit when they hear us say that $10,000 sounds very low, because that's a lot of money, and I certainly nothing to sneeze at. I just, as somebody who does this all the time and works in homes that get up in that $700,000 or more price range, $10,000 gets spread pretty thin, pretty quick, and a lot of that is in the labor, of course. Pretty labor intensive thing to do, and it just struck me as a low number. So I'm curious what they're able to do for $10,000. Obviously, the article doesn't go into that level of detail and really spell it out, but that's good. I mean, I think to get this technology into that production home environment, you are going to have to get those price points down, because even at $700,000, the typical buyer for these sort of homes is probably not looking to spend $50,000 or $100,000 on their home technology. And so I think the ability to put together packages that come in at those lower price points is very key when you get into that production home design center type of environment. It looks like Taylor Morrison has had some success with this before. They're calling this program, by the way, we should mention Interactive Home 2.0, and so that's what Taylor Morrison is branding under. It launched in March of this year, so 2016, and based on their 1.0 offer, which apparently they've had in place since 2012. And so they've been doing this for a while as far as smart home and home technology. Now, I don't know what that program entailed a few years ago, presumably probably a pretty basic security-based type of offering as opposed to more of a pure home automation play. But it looks like they've had success with it, and they're doubling down. And so I think that bodes well for Intuity, and I think that by all accounts seems to make sense for Taylor Morrison. And I'll just be curious to see if more production builders over the next couple of years are going to follow suit and really get behind it. We're starting to see, I think, the tip of that iceberg, and I do think it's going to become more prevalent in the production builder world, and it's just going to take some time for people to figure out how to structure it, how to price it, how to support it, all those sort of things.
Yeah, I mean, the conversations are already there. They're already happening at the home buying level. I mean, people are coming in saying, all right, well, what can I do with my iPad? Can I control my lights in your house? And the builders, honestly, they need to have an answer for that. I mean, they haven't traditionally because of the 3 or 4 bullet points I think Jason outlines at the top. Like, I read those and like, yep, I've heard every one of those over the past 10 years of doing this. It's a difficult thing to do for a home builder who just wants to put some, boards up and a roof over somebody's head, and putting in something like what we do. I think I hit on this earlier. This is early adoption time. Like, this is all like technology that isn't fleshed out and completely proven. It hasn't, like,
right.
A PVC pipe has certainly proven itself to hold water, right?
Yeah.
But a Staples Connect hasn't proven itself to last the 50 years that the PVC pipe is. So, of course, builders are going to be nervous about that. Same thing with a smart switch. Like, those aren't as reliable as a dumb switch. Of course they're not. They inherently aren't because they have a computer built inside. But those fears are going to have to eventually get trampled by demand of the consumer who wants to do these really cool things with their homes. And in the process, like, I think builders are going to have to adopt these types of technology package. We're already seeing it in this area too, and I'm sure there's more than just this one example. We thought this one was kind of cool, I think, because of the Legrand package that they were putting in. We just hadn't seen or heard of that going in since it was announced last year. Yeah.
No, you're right. Definitely not a first by any means. We've seen production builders starting to get behind this stuff. So definitely not to imply that this is a novel idea or that they're the first ones to do it. But yeah, I agree. I think that the approach was interesting to us. Probably worth noting that they have, of course, partnered up with a local integration company. And so you listeners probably assumed that, but is worth noting they're not doing this in-house per se. They've got a local company in the area called DataSmart that's going to be partnering up with them to install and support these solutions. And so that, I'm sure, was a big win for their company as well. And hopefully it works out for everybody. I think the other thing that you were sort of getting at and that I found interesting in the story is that they talked about the response on the sales side, and the people who have been showing the homes and kind of doing the sales presentations are using this technology to really help demonstrate the home. And by all accounts, looks like the people who are out shopping for the homes, it's resonated with them, and they're seeing definite interest. So I think you're right, Seth. The demand is going to start pulling through, and I think that the builders are slowly being forced to warm up to it. And I think as the platforms theoretically and hopefully get more robust and stable, that we'll just continue to see more of that trend.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're just landed a pretty large national account here that we have the technology packages lined up to just kind of be basically dropped in through the model home and then out to somewhere around 200-300 residences in a particular neighborhood. And as long as it's part of the sales process, and it is having to be these days because the customers are demanding it, I think it works out fine. It's where builders ignore that portion of the home building process, like home automation, where you and I get called into and we go, yeah, there's no Cat 5 in this house.
Yep.
You have,
too late.
Yeah, it's too late. I'm sorry. It's going to cost you double, if not triple, to make this work, or we're going to have to make some tough choices on features or quality of product that we're going to be able to put in now because we weren't here during the planning stages. So I'm totally glad this is going in. I'm glad that to see this momentum in the production builder home, and quite frankly, I'm glad to hopefully see this start to develop in homes that are lower than $700,000. Maybe the $300,000 and $400,000 range. It would be nice to see that too.
Yep, definitely. All right, Seth. Well, that's it. That's all we've got for this week. So let's go ahead and wrap up the show. I do want to, as always, thank our listeners for tuning in. We really do appreciate it. If you're a fan of home tech and you want to support the show in a small way, we would really appreciate that and encourage you to go over to HomeTech.fm/support. And that page has some information about how you can become a patron of the show. And that is a way that you can actually help support our efforts financially for as little as $1 a month. So, buy Seth and myself a cup of coffee, help keep us up through those late night edits. And we really do appreciate it. We've got a number of people on board as patrons of the show already. And it really does mean a lot to know that people are getting some value out of the show and are willing to go and support us in that way. It really is very meaningful. So we want to extend a big thanks to those of you who have already become patrons of the show, and really encourage you, if you haven't checked that out, again, go to HomeTech.fm/support. You can find some more information about that.
Yeah, and we always say, if you don't want to donate or anything, just run over to iTunes and give us a rating. That's helped people find. For some reason, it helps the computers push us to the top and people find the show and all that good stuff. So if you don't have the extra cash laying around, or you don't feel like donating or signing up for another service like that, totally understand. It's cool with us. We just ask that you go rate the show, because that really does help discoverability and helps new people come to the show that are interested in home automation.
Absolutely. So also want to just mention here as we're wrapping up that we love hearing from our listeners, and there's a couple of different ways you can contact us if you want to reach out. We definitely encourage that. We read all of those messages and do our best to reply to every one of them, and reply to a lot of them on the air as well. So if you want to have a point or a question featured on the show, it's a great way to do that. Contact us on Twitter at HomeTech Podcast, or you can hop over to, again, the website at HomeTech.fm, and we've got a feedback form over there, HomeTech.fm/feedback. And let us know how you're doing. If you've got any comments, suggestions, ideas for topics that we can cover on the show, we'd love to hear from you.
Yep, I guess that wraps up this episode. I'm going to need to go get a refill.
Yeah.
Start editing.
I'm sure you're getting pretty empty over there.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Well, thanks again, everybody, for listening. And Jason, I'll talk to you next week.
All right, sounds good, Seth. Take care.